Welcome to the Good Mood Show. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. Be sure to hit subscribe so that you get a good mood every single week. And today we are talking about 4 habits that are going to increase your optimism and therefore your happiness and therefore your success in all areas of life. And I'm coming to you with this information from Shawn Achor. Shawn wrote the groundbreaking book, The Happiness Advantage. I read that book years ago. He then became a regular contributor on Success Magazine. I always was looking for his column. Then he was on Oprah, and he was talking about his book, The Happiness Advantage, and followed that up with another book called Beyond Happiness. Well, Shawn was just a keynote speaker at an event that I attended. And man, he described in detail the 4 habits that will increase optimism and happiness. And we're going to get into those 4 habits. I'm going to break those down for you in my life, the ones that I've fallen down on, the ones I've kept up with, and the new tweaks that I'm going to do that I'm sure you're going to love that are going to increase your happiness. Here's the best part. 3 of these 4 habits take less than 2 minutes. The 4th one takes a little bit longer, but no more than 15 minutes. So 3 of the 4 habits take less than 2 minutes a day. If you could just invest 6 minutes a day to be the happiest version of yourself, would you do it? And the answer, of course, is yes. You're listening to the Good Mood Show. You value being in a good mood. And that's not how the journey started out for Shawn. So, as part of our newsletter, I'm going to be sending out a video that really has made an impact for me, a video of Shawn Achor. If you're part of our newsletter, you're going to get that video this week. If you want that video, just subscribe to the Good Mood Show newsletter. You can go to goodmoodshow.com and sign up for the newsletter, or reach out on my contact page and we'll send you over that video. But Shawn started out this whole journey of happiness with depression. He was a Harvard student, and when he was at Harvard, his job was to help students get connected in the community. And while he was doing that job, he became severely depressed. And he said his depression got so bad that he found himself on the bathroom floor of his dorm room at Harvard, unable to even breathe. He said breathing was painful. And I've had similar type experiences with depression. As Shawn was describing this to Oprah Winfrey, one of the most successful women or humans ever, she also said at the height of her success, when she was making the most money per year, she had a 2-year battle with depression. So if these highly successful people can battle depression, then when you're going through a time that is challenging or tough, or if you're battling depression yourself, just know there's hope. And this episode is that hope, because these 4 habits we're going to get to at the end of the show were the 4 things that Shawn started to do that turned his depression around and then ultimately set him on the path to become this happiness expert and write The Happiness Advantage. And he still does these 4 habits, these 4 cornerstone habits. He says he's done them 95% of the days since his 20s, when he battled that depression. And all of the research we're going to get into today about why these 4 habits make such a big difference. So we were raised to think, let's talk about why happiness seems so elusive, and why in our society it seems like the big epidemic is actually bad moods and feeling down and feeling angry and feeling frustrated. Like it's the norm to be annoyed or frustrated or unenthusiastic. Like I love looking at people's faces when I go to the store. If you just go to the grocery store and you look at people's faces, you can see the pain and suffering on their faces. And I love to look at their faces and then smile and just change their face from that face of pain to a face of happiness. And we, just try this experiment. There's research that shows if you see a big, genuine smile, your brain actually thinks you're smiling. It sees that face smiling. It actually thinks that you are smiling. It gives you dopamine. Just seeing someone else smile gives you dopamine in your brain, and you cannot help it but smile back. So one way to be happy, this is not one of the 4 habits we're going to talk about, but one way to be happy is just to smile big. And if you smile at someone else, they will smile big. And then you seeing their smile will give you dopamine, and it's an upward spiral. So, but thinking back to that grocery store, or just being out in public and seeing all the suffering on everyone's face, you would think that if we all just want happiness, and we do, it's the number one reason we do anything is to feel happy. You would think if we all just want happiness, we would be able to figure it out by now. The whole world, the only reason we do anything is to feel happy. We go to work so we have enough money to be happy. We find a spouse so that we can be married and find our partner and be happy. We have children because we think they're going to make us happy. We want to retire because we think it's going to make us happy. Well, everything we do, we're trying to be happy. Well, then why aren't we? And I'm going to tell you that it's because we're chasing after happiness in the wrong place. I'm reading a book right now. It's called You Are the Happiness You Seek. You are the happiness you seek. It's by Rupert Spira. It is an incredible book. Highly recommend. Rupert says that we're seeking happiness in the external world, and that's where we're looking for it. But happiness is actually found inside. It is your natural state of being. If we removed all negative thought patterns, all that would be left is the happiness of your being. But we're raised to think that if we achieve something, we'll be happy. And it's just because of the way we're brought up. If we get through this grade, then we'll be happy. If we get through high school, we'll be happy. If we can get to college, then we'll be happy. If we could make a certain amount of money, then we'd be happy. If we met the love of our life and got married, well, then we'd be happy. If we had children, well, then we'd be happy. If our children got good grades, well, then we'd be happy. If our children were successful, then we'd be happy. If they gave us grandchildren, then we'd be happy. If I could just retire, then I'd be happy. But what we find is that we've all had these milestones, maybe not all of them. I haven't had grandchildren, but we've all had milestones in our life that we kind of thought, man, if I could just get that thing, then everything would be right and I'd be happy. And every time we get that thing, the goalpost just moves further away. This is scientifically proven that if all it took was achieving one thing and then we'd be happy, we all would have been happy when we were 5. We learned to tie our shoes. Man, if we could learn to tie our shoes, we'd be happy. Well, the rest of our life, we could be like, how's your day? Awesome, man, I tied my shoes this morning. But it's not the way it works. Once you learn to tie your shoes, well, then you need to learn how to read. And once you learn how to read, then you have to read at a 2nd grade level. And then you have to read, at a high school level, and then a collegiate level. And you got to put it to work, and then you got to write a book, and then you'll be happy. It's because we're looking for happiness outside of us, and it doesn't exist out there. The goalpost always moves. So every time we're seeking happiness in achievement or in the external world, it won't happen. We'll just keep seeking. This is what brings us to how can we then if we're saying, okay, well, we can't get happiness in external achievement, maybe what I need to do is just work super, super hard, make a ton of money, like a crazy amount of money, and retire early. If I could just retire early so I don't have to go to work, then I'd be happy. So grind, like hustle, 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 hustle. And I know people like this that just ground it out and get all of this work done, make a ton of money, and retire in your 40s or your 50s or even in your 60s, and then you'll get to be happy. But what you find when you talk with people in retirement homes is they're not exactly happy. I remember when my mom first retired, she said, I don't know what to do with myself. Now, I love my mom dearly, and she's found passion, and her passion is in her grandchildren, and she loves to volunteer. But it's because people in retirement homes, they say, if I could just be making a positive impact in the lives of others, then I would be happy. So the goal of life is not retirement. We're kind of like bred to think also the goal of life is to be comfortable. If we could just retire and do whatever we wanted and relax and play golf, and then we'd be happy. But no, having all the freedom in the world and being comfortable doesn't make us happy. We're going to get into what does here later in the show, and the 4 habits that'll really make a difference for you. But let's first talk about how negativity works. There was a study that was done in airport lounges where people were waiting for planes. So the study, they needed at least 15 people to be waiting for their flight, and it needed to have it like at least 15, 20 minutes before the flight. What they would do is they would bring in one researcher, and that researcher would sit in the middle of these 15 people who are on their phones or doing whatever, and they would start tapping their foot. They'd start bouncing up and down, kind of in nervous anticipation. Then they'd start looking at their watch. And the researcher would look at their watch kind of in a nervous way, tap their foot, get a little bit jittery. And within 5 minutes, half of the people in that surrounding that person would look at their watch at least 4 times before the flight, would start jostling between their seat, agitatedly tapping their foot, or also bouncing around. So what we found from that study is that negativity and stress is contagious. And so is positivity and optimism. It is also contagious. So a lot of people think when they hear that idea that, negativity is contagious, that one of the keys to happiness is just to cut out all the negative people from your life. I did that. I thought, man, that's what I need to do. If negativity is contagious, I'll just surround myself with only positive people. That's not the solution. In fact, that actually reduces our happiness because we start cutting out social connection, and social connection is one of the keys to happiness. So you don't want to cut out everyone who's negative, because there's not going to be anyone left. I just said, we'll go through the grocery store, walk through the airport, see what everybody's faces look like. If you're listening to the Good Mood Show, you are in the minority. The majority of people are not focused on positive psychology. So what you want to do, this, like, somebody who's negative isn't just a bad person. They're a wonderful person who's suffering. To be a true happiness creator, you need to be so good at your internal happiness that you can be around other people, which is the world, who is in their suffering, who has those long faces, and smile big and be that contagion that brings up the mood of everyone around you. You have to put your own armor on every single morning, your own happiness armor, to go out into the world, this negative world, and be a light that lights up everyone around you. That's the key to happiness. Cutting out people who are negative will just make you lonely, because the world is suffering. So we're going to give you 4 habits. And I know I keep alluding to this, but by the end of the show, you're going to have 4 habits that take 2 minutes or less that will fortify your happiness so that you can be a light in the world and light up everyone around you and be that contagious person that then shows up in the midst of 15 people who are waiting for their plane and is so happy that just your energy, just your aura lifts everyone around you, and the whole flight is more positive. So Shawn had described lots of studies, and the studies pointed to one predictor of success that made more difference than anything else, more than IQ, more than work ethic, more than how much you knew, how much education you had. The one predictor of success was the amount of optimism someone had. And there was one particular company that sold insurance that had done a huge study, spent millions of dollars studying who was going to be the most successful salesperson that sold insurance. And every other predictor didn't really move the needle, but their level of optimism was the biggest predictor of financial success. And so they started to hire people that were not as bright, didn't have as much, background in insurance, maybe didn't pass the test with as high of scores, but who scored highest on Optimism score. And within 2 years, the people who scored highest on Optimism score were selling 50% more insurance each year than people who were hired under the old metrics, which was knowledge and experience. And so they changed everything about the way they hired their people. Well, what does this study mean to you? It means if you want success in this world, then you have to start to develop this positivity and this optimism. That's what the Good Mood Show is all about. That's what we're trying to do here. And it's not just your career. Think about your relationships. Like, how much better are your relationships when you feel amazing? When you feel amazing, your relationships are easy. It's when you're being super hard on yourself and you're super down that your relationships are having trouble. How about your health? I mean, there are so many studies that link optimism and positivity to positive health. So the things that really matter to most people, the three things are success in their career, success in their relationships, and success with their health. Those three things are the most influenced by your positivity, by your optimism, by your good mood. So everything improves with happiness. And so then we think, well, maybe I could just get rid of my stress. Well, you can't. Stress is a part of life. In fact, stress is inevitable. There's no way to get rid of stress. It's because everything in the world changes all the time. And that creates stress. We can say, well, I don't want it to change and try to control the world and make it not change, but that adds stress to us trying to control everything. So it's not a lack of stress that's going to increase our optimism and happiness. It's finding happiness, understanding that the world is stressful. And that really is about putting positivity first ahead of desiring success. Shawn works with some of the greatest athletes that have ever lived, and they hire him to coach him. And he said, they also had said, man, if I could just, make it to the Hall of Fame, then I'd be happy. So, but their high school coach said, hey, this is the championship game. Kids, if you win this game, you will remember it for the rest of your life, and then you'll be happy. And they'd win the game, but nothing would really change. And then the coach would say, well, you know what? You're gifted enough. I think you could play college ball. If you could just play college ball, then you would be happy. But then they get to college and their happiness level hadn't changed. You say, well, if you got drafted in the NFL, if you made the big leagues, if you made the NFL, then you get to be happy. But then they said, if you went in the first round, then you'd be happy. Well, hey, after this, if you got the big contract, if you made millions, then you'd be happy. Well, hey, now if you get the Pro Bowl, if you made the Pro Bowl, then you'd be happy. Well, but you don't have a championship. So if you could just win a championship, then you'd be happy. Well, if you could defend your championship, then you'd be happy. If you could get to the Hall of Fame, then you'd be happy. And Shawn said, talking to many players who are destined for the Hall of Fame, like the Hall of Fame is already a done deal because of the careers they've had. They are not happy. They're terrified. They're terrified of what they're going to do next because their playing career is over. So if these 1%ers or 0.1 of 1%ers, the pinnacle of achievement, the thing that we could say, like, man, if I could achieve that, then I'd be happy. If they're not happy, how could we expect to be? And happiness is really just all about reconditioning our brain to feel happy in this moment. And we're going to get into these 4 habits. And it starts with this idea of an experiment that was done with people playing Tetris. So there were college students that they were experimenting with, and they had these college students play the game Tetris. Tetris is a video game that was on very, very popular in the 1990s, where you had boxes and lines and L shapes, and you had to put all of these shapes in a certain pattern so that they'd make straight lines. And if they made a straight line, you got points and you scored. Well, they had these college kids play Tetris for 5 straight hours. And they wanted to analyze the effects of what it was like to play Tetris for 5 straight hours. And what they found was that the kids, after they got done playing Tetris for 5 hours, would go to the grocery store and start to line up the loaves of bread so that they lined up in a straight row so that they could get points. They'd be driving their car and they'd see an opening and they would move their car into the opening so that everything was straight and they would get points. Everything they were doing was about how to put things into Tetris because their whole frame of reference had changed. They were seeing the world through the frame of Tetris. Well, this is us with negativity or positivity. Where's our paradigm? Where are we training our brain for hours on end to look for? Are we training our brain for hours on end to look for negativity? If you're not training it consciously to look for positivity, yes, you are. Your brain is automatically trained to look for what's going wrong. It's called your survival instinct. So the Tetris that you're born with is pessimism and what's going wrong and what's not right. And this isn't anybody's fault. It's the reason that we're here. It's how we survived. We had to look for what was going wrong in the jungle so that we would survive. If we ate the wrong berry, we could die. If we didn't see the tiger coming, we could be eaten and die. If we didn't say the right thing to our tribe, they could kick us out and we would die. So our brain has evolved to show us all the stuff we're not doing well enough and what's going wrong so that we can survive. So our Tetris effect right now is what's not good enough. We have to retrain our brain so that our Tetris effect is now what's going right. I do that. One of my habits every single morning is I write down 3 things I did well the day before. This isn't one of Shawn's 4, it's one of mine. It's a habit that I've done for over a decade. And I do it because I know my brain's telling me what I did wrong. It's going to tell me the stupid thing I said to that person. It's going to tell me how I missed the game-winning shot. It's going to tell me about some past argument that I had with somebody. It's going to ruminate about the thing that that person said to me. And it's always going to be bringing back up all this negative stuff that I did, all the stuff I did bad. But it never brings up the stuff I did right. It just doesn't. If I'm doing it right, good. All right, you're good on that. We're going to survive. So I counteract that negativity by every morning, I write down 3 things I did well the day before. I call it 3 wins. Every single day, it's 3 new things because I have to consciously sit there and think, what did I do well yesterday? Well, this brings us to the first habit Shawn talks about. And it's also a habit I do every morning. And it is writing down 3 things you're grateful for. He said, though, you can't just write down 3 things you're grateful for mindlessly, because everyone always writes down, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for our health, I'm grateful for our success. Well, that doesn't do anything to improve your optimism and happiness. What you have to do is you have to write down 3 new things that you're grateful for that you've never written down. Oh, now it gets a lot harder. It also is the same principle as why I write down 3 things I did well yesterday. What happens is our brain has to start running an app in the background. And that app has to store everything we're doing well today and 3 new things that we're noticing that we're grateful for today, so that when we get to our journal or a piece of paper tomorrow morning, it already has those 3 things primed up, because the brain doesn't really want to work. It wants to make the job easy. Well, what happens when your brain is constantly collecting all the things you're doing well and all the things you're grateful for that are new today? Well, you naturally become happy. Your brain is now counting what's going right instead of just what's going wrong, and is counting what you're grateful for. And it starts to become little mundane stuff like, man, I'm grateful for the driver that drives the truck that brings my produce to the grocery store. I'm grateful for the person that invented the engine for that truck so that he could get there. I'm grateful for the guy that got up in the tree and picked the apple. I'm grateful for the rain because it grew that apple. I'm grateful for the bugs that create the soil so that that tree can grow and that apple can grow. I'm grateful for God for creating the soil. Like, you know, if you really wanted to, we could go into 100 gratitudes every time you get one apple. I'm grateful for the person that paved the road. Without paved roads, that apple couldn't get to me. I'm grateful for the person at the grocery store that unpacked the box. I'm grateful for the cashier that checked me out. I'm actually grateful for the guy that we hired to go buy the apple from the grocery store that picked it out by hand and then got in his car and drove it to me so that I could have apples today. Man, like it's amazing when we have to think of 3 new things we're grateful for every day, how our brain can start to see gratitude in everything. I was joking today that I'm grateful for the mosquitoes. You know, mosquitoes are like the biggest pest. And when we go out in the backyard, they just attack me and the kids. It's like the last thing I would ever say I'm grateful for. But in reality, if you start to have to say, I'm grateful for 3 new things every day, you can find why you're grateful for the mosquitoes. If I took the mosquitoes out of the environment, the birds that feed on them would probably leave. And then if they went, like our whole ecosystem could fail. And then eventually our life could be over because there's no more mosquitoes. So I'm grateful for the mosquitoes because they sustain life. So the first habit of 4, write down 3 new things that you've never written down before that you're grateful for each day. I don't want you to do this forever. Forever is a super long time. Just commit to do this for 3 weeks, 21 days. This is a 21-day happiness challenge. For the next 21 days, I want you to write down 3 new things you're grateful for. And if you want extra credit, write down 3 things you did well the day before. Number two is the thing that takes longer than 2 minutes. The gratitude and the wins, they only take 2 minutes. Number 2 is the only part of the 4 habits that are going to take you longer than 2 minutes. And it is a 15-minute brisk walk 4 to 5 times a week. I'm not talking about pumping iron for an hour. I'm not talking about running 3 miles. A 15-minute brisk walk 4 to 5 times a week. What they found in studies is that if you walk 15 minutes briskly 4 to 5 times a week, you get more endorphins, dopamine, and positive emotions than the strongest antidepressant medicine on the market. So if someone actually goes to a doctor for depression, the best prescription would be, I need you to walk for 15 minutes briskly 4 to 5 times a week. And that would help you more than the medication would. Now, I'm not disparaging medication. I'm actually a huge proponent of medication as something that can be also helpful in this road to feeling our best. And if that's something that is helping you, by all means, continue to do it. But add on to it 15 minutes of brisk walk 4 to 5 times a week. And, we had on this show a guy who wrote the book, The Upward Spiral. Alex Korb wrote this book, The Upward Spiral. And in the book, he was suffering from depression. And then he started running a marathon. He had to train for running a marathon, and his depression lifted. And his conclusion is that it's impossible to be fully depressed while training for a marathon. And that's the same thing that number 2 here is hitting on. If you can get your heart rate up and exercise just with a 15-minute brisk walk 4 to 5 times every single week, your mood will improve. And that one positive habit, we start to see other positive habits show up because of it. Usually people start to eat better. They start to make healthier choices. And then that means they start to feel better. Then they start to smile more. Then other people smile back at them more. And so it's like this, again, what Alex Korb describes as an upward spiral. All right, number 3, 2 minutes a day. Take your hands off your keyboard and breathe. Watch your breath. 2 minutes a day. That's it. You're at work, set an alarm every single day. You got an alarm that goes off at 10:45 a.m. And that alarm says 2 minutes of watching your breath. Your brain is going to say, I don't have time for 2 minutes of watching my breath. I have too much to do. Tell your brain to calm down. What we're doing is actually creating space from our brain. And so 2 minutes of watching your breath every single day will improve your happiness to levels that you really can't even comprehend. And it's because the only thing in between you and your happiness is your brain. Going back to Rupert Spira's book, You Are the Happiness You Seek. Your being without your thoughts is pure happiness. So when we start to watch our breath, and when a thought appears, we say, oh, there's those thoughts again. I'm going to go back to watching my breath. And you don't get caught up in those thoughts. You start to train your brain how to not identify with all of those negative thoughts at things. Eventually, after time, when your brain thinks negative thoughts, you get to say, I'm not going to believe that one. Oh, I'm going to let that one pass. And then when you do get caught up in one, you could say, you know what? I think it's time for me to take 2 minutes of watching my breath. And that thought loses its power as you withdraw from it. So this is habit number 3, is just 2 minutes of watching your breath every single day. If you really want to get a meditation habit going, again, don't do this forever. 21 days. It's a 21-day happiness challenge. 21 days, do 2 minutes of watching your breath. I love the app called Calm, C-A-L-M. If you download that Calm app, they've got a 10-minute daily meditation. There's a few different teachers. Tamara is who I started with on that app. I loved her. I know that there's Jay Shetty. He's got a 10-minute meditation every single day, a brand new meditation every single day. You can listen to the Daily Jay. And then the Daily Trip was the one that I loved the most. But every day for 10 minutes, I would just put my earphones in and follow the prompts and have one of these great meditation teachers just walk me through watching my breath and letting my thoughts fly by. And if a thought appeared, they would just say, oh, I'm thinking, and then go back to watching your breath. And you start to disassociate from these thoughts being you, and you start to get more association with who you truly are, which is the happiness that you seek. All right, the last habit, number 4, and this is my favorite habit. Number 4 is spend 2 minutes a day crafting a text or an email, sending praise or thanking someone for something nice they did. And somebody new. So for 21 days, every morning, you're going to take 2 minutes to write one thank you text or one text of praise, or it could be an email, a thank you email or an email of praise to a new person every day for 21 days. Well, what this does is it puts you in a mode of appreciation, but more than that, after 21 days, you will have made positive connection with 21 people. In 21 people being connected to you, you will be in the top 15% of the world for social connections. And the number one indicator of longevity and of happiness is the amount of social connections that you have. So every single day, take 2 minutes to send somebody some love by text or email, somebody new. And this will grow your social network, which will grow your connections. You'll feel happy. Later in the day, you'll think back like with all this joy, like, man, I just made that person's day. I said the nicest things. And, on day 21, you're going to start to have to go deep into your connections. You might have to go back to, maybe your child's teacher from last year because they made a big difference in your child's life. Or maybe you'll have to go back to the person that mentored you years ago because now you are where you are because of what they did. And you'll bring these connections you haven't talked to in a long time back into your daily life. And that brings you more happiness. You're also spreading joy, lighting up that person's world. And that makes you lit up. So those are the 4 habits that Shawn Achor recommends. They're the habits that pulled him up out of depression. They're the 4 cornerstone habits that he teaches everyone to have the happiness advantage. And happiness doesn't only just make you more successful. It doesn't only just give you better health. It also feels freaking amazing. It's the only reason we do anything is to feel happy. So I hope you've really enjoyed this show. I want you to take action on this. So take the 21-day challenge. For the next 21 days, do these 4 things every day. They only take 2 minutes apiece, plus a 15-minute walk. You've got 21 minutes for the next 21 days to make your life the happiest it can be. And if you want that video that really changed my life from Shawn, subscribe to the Good Mood Show newsletter and we'll email it out to you. Just go to goodmoodshow.com and sign up for that newsletter or reach out on the contact page and I'll make sure we get you that video. Guys, thank you so much for investing in your happiness. As you light up the world. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week.